Dwayne's been working with us since 2003. However, the file for the highway development project wasn't taken over by him till 2008. Dwayne is the project manager for the Nova Scotia Department of Infrastructure Renewal, and he has been a strong supporter for the highway development project. I'd like to have a warm welcome for Dwayne as he's going to talk about the highway development project.
Just a further introduction, because this is a panel. We have Doug Brown, who is a lawyer, who is our independent legal counsel, providing us advice and corresponding with the Department of Justice, both provincially and federally here as well. So whoever... Yeah, he'll go first.
Thank you, Rose. Thank you, Chief. We're just working on getting the slideshow up on the screen. I got a couple of good jokes to kill the time while we wait, but there's too many young kids here, so I can't share them. No, I'm not here to brag about my kids, but they're here to say hello to. Woohoo! Here we go. Okay, this is, for the most part, this presentation I've delivered before, so some of it's going to seem repetitive from past sessions, but I'll try to quickly step through the old stuff and get to some of the newer things that I've added in. So as you all know, Paqtnkek was established, the reserve was established in 1820. The province constructed Highway 104 in the 1960s, which was the creation of the issue that still exists today, with the southern half of the community being severed, the lands being severed off. Many decades without resolution. We've heard some of the other members, some of the council people talk about it. Kerry talked, wherever Kerry went, he spoke eloquently about the issue. And as Rose had mentioned, we fortunately got to a point of creating a working committee back in 2006, and it's been full steam forward for almost 10 years now, over 10 years actually. So the project, we have posters around the room. We've got the three-dimensional model at the center of the floor that we've built. Basically, the project is $15.3 million. We'll see us build a diamond interchange, like most of the conventional interchanges you see One of the things that's a little unique here is that our intersections at the bridge crossing are roundabouts. So this would be very similar to what you'd see going through Antigonish. I would say Addington Forks Road or even the Southside Harbour Road exits would be almost identical. One of the differences with the bridge over the highway here is that we're actually building a 10-foot wide walkway that's separated from traffic to get you from one side of the highway to the other. We also have a connector road northerly up to Trunk 4, which ties into where the Afton Road intersection is now. On the south side, we have the South Connector, which travels easterly and ties into the portion of Afton Road south of Highway 104. And you also see a little tail hanging off on the lower left side. That's another short piece of road to give additional access to Paqtnkek land to the southwest quadrant of the interchange. So for anybody driving by today, if you're going from Cape Breton to New Brunswick or Halifax, you wouldn't know where the community was. You wouldn't know where Paqtnkek is. There's a couple of highway signs out there that indicate Paqtnkek. You have no sense of place of the community. Once the interchange is built, you will have place. You will have an obvious location that landmarks where the community is and where those economic benefits will be for the band to enjoy and for everybody that's traveling from Cape Breton to New Brunswick or Halifax to stop and pay a visit and take advantage of what your community has to offer. So at that north end with the Afton Road intersection, right now if you come down Afton Road and if you want to turn left and you're looking to your right, it's a little bit of a blind crest. It's kind of hard to see if cars are coming around quite fast. So not only are we building the interchange and those new roads, but we're also going to make improvements to Trunk 4 to make those sight lines and that visibility much better, much safer intersection for everybody using it. So we have the three-dimensional model. This was the very first time our department has invested resources in finding a company that could actually produce this. This piece was printed in about 15 different segments using a three-dimensional printer. It was actually done out of Connecticut in a facility there, shipped to a contractor we had in Halifax, and built and assembled on the table that we have here right now. So we were pretty excited about doing it, and it does a great job of showing what's going to happen on the project. It's always challenging for us with plans to convey the message of what's going on. In your surrender package, you'll see some of those really detailed plans that are going to be hard, if not impossible, to decipher. It's graphics like this, it's the three-dimensional model that'll help close that gap between things that are really technical on paper that have to be, and converting it into some images that are much easier to comprehend. Will come with the project. There's also long-term residential needs as your lands are filling in with new homes, your families are growing, you have a high rate of community growth, you need a place for everybody to live. So the lands that are on the north side of the highway now and potentially to the south as well will offer additional opportunities for your community to grow. And it is going to be a piece of that overall future highway twinning of Highway 104 from Taylor Road to Monastery. So intersections like the one at Summerside Road, at Paqtnkek Road, those intersections, when we do twin, those will disappear. Some form of interchange will be incorporated in there, and the Paqtnkek interchange also serves as a vital piece of that overall twinning project. But we need all of you to make it happen. When July 13th comes, you got to come out and make the vote, get your friends and family members out. It's a great thing. So it's the land is there's multiple elements of the of the agreement and the land surrender that had to be pieced together. There's reserve land that's administered by Canada through the Indian Act. There's portions of fee simple land that have been purchased by the band that are also required for the project. There's some homes, as you see in the community, some homes have been relocated, trying to get things ready for the project to happen. And of course, all of that's not being done out of the good graces of the community. There is compensation as part of that, and Lee Weatherby has been instrumental to the band for putting together a good compensation package to offset those those impacts and those costs. So I won't linger on this too much. We do have the posters around. If there's questions afterward, we can talk about them one-on-one or at the end of my talk here as well. So we'll just continue to move on. So it's been a we've been working for 10 years as a working group here in the community, moving things forward. Our department's also hired a consultant for the past few years to do the design. We had 4 bridges to design. We had 4 interchange ramps, about 3 kilometers of road. There's environmental compensation plans, survey plans. The more the surveyors dug, the more issues they found, the more hurdles we had to cross, the more time it took. So it's been really stretched into multiple years to get us to this point, but we're all pretty happy we're finally here. So there are some recent questions that we heard at past community sessions. I just wanted to quickly touch on some of them. It was walkability along Afton Road. What can we do to make that a little safer, a little more comfortable? And with the changes to Afton Road and how the connector ties in, we're rebuilding a portion of Afton Road. Some of the sharp curves are going to get flattened out of that. The cross-section is going to be a little flatter and wider, better visibility. We see opportunities with the band, with the municipality to look into lighting, some additional lighting that there may be potential opportunities working with the municipality. Walkability along the North Connector. So being an engineer, we have to put everything into a box. So for this type of road, our standard is half a meter of paved shoulder outside the travel lane. Well, half a meter is not too much to walk on, and we recognize there's going to be community members walking these new roads. So we're extending that from a half a meter out to a meter, and more recently we're making commitments to extend that out to 1.5 meters of width. So it's to get you well out of the travel path of cars and trucks on the connector road, but at least give you a decent amount of space to walk on the pavement itself, so you're not off in the ditch trying to make your way along the connector. Walking along the highway was another issue that we heard. So right now, it's a 2-lane, 2-way highway. There's not much room outside the travel lane to be walking. We really don't want you walking on a 100 series highway either. But looking long term, we're going to have an interchange that gets built. So it's going to be putting you multiple meters away from that travel lane, well over onto the connector road. We also see opportunity in behind the guardrail. So where the guardrail is placed along the exit ramp, there's additional gravels in behind there if you choose to feel a little more comfortable in behind the guardrail to walk from Beetle Loop over to Saginaw. So I also mentioned their connection to Saginaw Loop. So at the interchange itself, we would probably show it here. So at the interchange itself, whoa. So here's the Diamond Interchange. Here's the health center over here. So what we're anticipating doing is punching a connection through here, a walkable connection. So anybody in the community can walk down and get direct walking access to the roundabout and to the interchange rather than meandering through the woods. So it's something that we're working with our project engineer and incorporating that while construction's ongoing. So there's going to be we may not have all the answers going into construction, but there's always certain things that we work through during construction and in advance of completion that there's going to be issues that get sorted out along the way. And that's one that we think will be best addressed during construction. So for the connection across the highway, as I mentioned, we're building a 3-meter or a 10-foot wide separate walking path or cycling path on the east side of the bridge. So any vehicles that are using the interchange, you'll have a separated walking area that's not exposed to traffic across the bridge. And we make the incorporations, the walking incorporation through those roundabouts as well to give everybody a safe place to walk. Again, thinking long term that right now it's just woods on the south side, but eventually we anticipate there's going to be more there. There may be commercial or residential elements that develop based on the community's desires. And we want to leave the interchange in as best condition as possible for the not only for the driving community, but for anybody that's walking. Something you'll see in the notice of referendum package, in the tripartite agreement, a couple of these things gets mentioned. A couple other things that are mentioned, one of them is access to the lands at Heatherton. So you currently get access to the lands at Heatherton from the highway. At some point in the future, when we twin the highway, all those driveways and accesses that access directly on there get eliminated. We have to make changes. So government's made commitments to rebuild that connection back to Summerside Road. Not only that, but work with Chief and Council at that time to find out what is the best solution and come up with a way to find the safest connection to those lands without severing those. Aboriginal workforce, that's been, we've had a lot of discussions at our working committee meetings on strengthening the wording in the agreement. You'll see in the agreement it talks about a desire to have a minimum of 20% Aboriginal workforce from Paqtnkek to work with the contractors. And we really strengthen the wording in that to really put it on the contractors to try to make that happen, work with the community, identify members, incorporate them into the workforce. One question I just heard here today, and I knew the answer, but I decided to throw it in the presentation. What happens to the timber? So the first step in building a highway is you cut the trees down that are in the way. So what we'll be doing is we'll be cutting the trees down and stockpiling them to the side of the right-of-way for the use of Paqtnkek. They're not going to be owned by the contractor. They're not going to be shipped away. It'll be up to Paqtnkek to decide what they want to do with that lumber. One other thing you'll see in the agreement is some discussion of a temporary permit. So it's the way it works with the surrender process. Everybody's going to vote in favor on July 13th. That sets the wheels in motion at the federal level to get signatures done, but that does take time. It could be 6 months, it could be 12 months for all that paperwork to happen. We didn't want to wait 6 or 12 months to start construction. So we've also built in a permit aspect through BCR with Chief and Council and through INAC that will allow us early access. So we don't have to wait that 6 or 12 months. As soon as the vote happens, we can kick our wheels in motion and getting tenders going out. And with any luck, we'll see construction starting out here in September. So so we could be ready for September. It's a tight time frame we're on. We have a pot of federal money that we really want to spend by the end of 2018. So the approach we're wanting to take is with a single contractor to go out and hit this really hard over the next 18 months. With any luck, we'll have people walking and cars driving on this within a year and a half. But you hear the message clear today that, and it's getting hammered into everybody's heads, you have to vote yes on July 13th if it's anything other than a yes, and if things don't go well, it's going to be a sad day. And that is all I have this time.
Thanks, Dwayne. My name's Douglas Brown. I was asked by Chief Prosper, to get on the Highway Committee back in 2014. I was hired as independent legal counsel in order to represent Paqtnkek's legal interests in the back and forth between the province and the feds and Paqtnkek. Also did some other work, for example, drafting and reviewing and discussing, for example, the plain language summary that might have come out in the packages that went out, I guess, a couple weeks ago. And essentially, my essential role was to ensure that the feds in the province, as parties to the tripartite agreement, were essentially cutting a fair deal to the Paqtnkek community. And so I'm happy to report that it's a fair deal. Other than that, it's winding down for my role working with Chief and Council and Judy and Dwayne and Rose. It was a very productive series of meetings, and I'm very happy for this community, and I hope everyone votes yes. Thanks.
Thank you, Doug. I just also want to recognize Jason as well, who works with the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal, who has been working with Dwayne and has been helping us out tremendously with this file as well. The next person I'd like to introduce is Lee Weatherby. Lee Weatherby is we're his client. Paqtnkek is his client. And he has the expertise, being an appraiser, a person that is quite accustomed to dealing with evaluations of lands and loss of lands. And he usually does this through expropriations involving provincial expropriations and things of that nature. So when this came along, we were quite fortunate to get somebody like Lee Weatherby involved and to get his expertise to do an assessment on the value of compensation that is owed to the man for the lands that have been exchanged, the fee simple and reserve lands, the houses that had to be destroyed or removed, and also certain impacts to existing lands, reserve lands that we have, both not only reserve lands, but fee simple lands as well. And so what Lee is going to do is going to give you a breakdown on sort of that process, that methodology, that sort of equation he went through to determine the compensation element for this particular highway project. Lee?
Thank you, Chief, for the introduction. My name's Lee Weatherby, and I work with a company called Turner Drake in Halifax. For those of you who are not familiar with our company, we've been around for over 40 years. I've been with the company for, goodness, 36 years now. Most of my work is done doing valuations of land and buildings for a variety of purposes. A lot of it is expropriation work, a lot of it is for highways, and a lot of it is for landowners who are being expropriated for highways. I do a lot of work with First Nations in New Brunswick and in Nova Scotia on spec claims and giving advice on various real estate matters. I was retained on this file about 3 years ago to prepare a comprehensive valuation report that would address all of the compensation issues that Paqtnkek as a landowner should be entitled to. And I think a legitimate question you can ask right at the start is, if this project is so good for the band and you're going to be better off as a result of it, which undoubtedly you will be in terms of values, why are you also entitled to compensation? And the answer to that, quite simply, is that as a landowner giving up land, you are entitled to be compensated for it. And the guidelines that we follow in cases like this are contained in the Expropriation Act. Expropriation language is pretty heavy going, gets all legal on you very, very quickly. But essentially, for a landowner, it protects your right to be properly compensated for all the effects that a partial taking like this is going to have. The report which I produced, which took 3 years, was 3 years in the making, is 157 pages. And I think a copy of that is available in the band office for anyone who has the time and inclination to read through it. If you read it cover to cover, you'll know as much as I do about this claim. A summary was prepared of 8 pages, which is in the packages which I think have been sent out already. So most people will have seen a copy of the summary report, which is just 8 pages. Now, I'm operating a slideshow from 30 feet away, so we didn't have a dress rehearsal. We'll see how this goes. The slide you see here, it's very similar to the one that Dwayne presented. It shows the lands which are going to be acquired in purple and in orange. The orange is the reserve land. The purple lands are what we call the fee simple lands. That's fee simple, which are owned in trust for the band. All of the land which is outlined in red are the total land holdings of the band. And in terms of the number of acres, the total land holdings of the band are just over 700 acres. The land that's been taken for the highway is 67 acres. So it's almost 10% of the land that you own is being taken for the highway project. And there are 2 small pieces in the Heatherton lands, just for future twinning of the highway through that section. They're also included in the report, but they are relatively small in terms of land area and in terms of dollars. This is a page that you probably can't read, but it's the cover page of the report. And on the next page, you'll see that this is the letter at the beginning of the report, which is addressed to Chief Prosper. And it's important for me to point out that our client for this project was the band. It's Paqtnkek First Nation is our client. The report had to go through some rigorous reviews by the Department of Transportation and by the federal government to make sure it met their standards. And so they are also entitled to rely on the results of this report, since they will be the people writing the checks for the compensation. And if we keep going through, this is probably the most important page of the entire document for 2 reasons. Firstly, it's got my signature on it. And without that, it's not worth very much. So that signature comes below a value of 2.3 million and change. So the total compensation package has a value of just over $2.3 million in total. And the table that you see there, which is far too small to see, on the next page, I've blown it up to a size where you might be able to make it out. If you have the package, you will see this table in the package there. And let me just spend some time going through this table, because there have been some questions asked about this. Of course, I can't see it from here. I'll have to find my copy. So this is arranged in a series of lines and columns, and it's done that way to meet the requirements of the federal and provincial government in terms of showing how the total compensation is broken down. And there are various compensation categories that you will see in the center of the column there. And the term that's familiar to most people is the one called market value. Most people understand what market value is. It's what property will sell for if it's put on the market for sale. There are some additional categories of compensation which have to be addressed in expropriation cases, and where there are homes involved and homes have to be relocated or removed or demolished, there is a test which is applied called the home for a home test. And what that basically means is if the market value of homes is not sufficient to replace the homes, either through purchase or through construction, then you're entitled to be paid an increased amount sufficient to give you the compensation to rebuild the homes elsewhere. And that's the basis on which the compensation was calculated here. It's called the Home for a Home clause in the Expropriation Act. The other headings that you'll see in the compensation category are called injurious affection. Now, injurious affection, quite simply, is the amount of diminished value to property which is still retained by the landowner after the land has been taken. So you still own 90% of your land. That includes some homes which will be so close to the new highway which we feel will be diminished in value because of that, and so there is an entitlement there to the diminished value which comes under the heading of injurious affection. Splendid term that you'll only find in the Expropriation Act. And the final head of claim there is called disturbance. It's a relatively small amount, only $17,500. That basically is to cover the costs of moving homes, moving the belongings from one home to another. So for the 7 homes which have to be replaced, there is a cost involved in people moving from one home to another. So that's a disturbance cost to cover the cost of moving. But by and large, the largest component of the compensation is the home for a home. That's the compensation for the 7 homes which have had to be relocated to make way for the hijacked. But it's basically an inventory of all of the lands which the band owns, close to 700 acres, and it gives a breakdown of all of the various parcels which will be taken, which together make up 67 acres. The 67 acres, the purple and the orange lands on the plans, they're contained in a total of 17 different parcels, and values have to be given to each of those 17 individual parcels, which is part of the reason the report goes on for 157 pages, dealing with all of those sorts of details. There are three what we call pinch points where we have to focus on value much more closely, and that's in and around where the highway comes close to the houses. And so in the report you'll see that we've shown some detailed plans of how the highway boundaries and the coloured lands, that's the lands which are going to be taken, where the boundaries of that fit with the existing houses, and which houses will be taken and which houses will remain. So if we go through, there's a series of 5 or 6 of these. This is along the highway corridor. This is at Afton Road where it meets the existing Trans-Canada. And this is Afton Road where it meets the old trunk number 4. And that's the same from a different angle. And so that sort of detail is in the report. It's there for you to see if you wanted to study it. The 3 pinch points, this is the first of them. And it's worth just dwelling on this because there's a level of detail here which just helps to explain the compensation story, which to me is a thrilling thing, but I appreciate to you as an audience, maybe not quite so much. This is in the Sycamore Road area where the new off-ramp will come in and the new connector road. And so what you see on the detail there is the existing houses in black, and you can see the ones which fall within the shaded purple or the shaded orange. They're the houses which have had to be removed, and these houses have now, the replacement houses have now been built, and the occupants have been moved. These houses are now ready for removal if they've not been moved already. You'll see also some dotted blue lines on there. And part of the challenge in the valuation was to establish what the appropriate land values should be for the various components which together make up the 67 acres. In its simplest sense, when you do appraisals of land, you can say it's worth so much per acre, so many $1,000 per acre is the simplest way to do it. In these particular cases here, at these pinch points, there are lands along the existing roads, in this case Sycamore Road, where there is a potential to, or there was a potential prior to this taking, to create some additional building lots between the existing houses. And so those have been lost. And there is a much higher value given to those potential building lots which sit along existing roads, because those roads are fully serviced with sewer and water lines, so they have a relatively high value. And so in the valuation, we ascribed relatively high values to these potential building lots which don't have houses on them, but they have that potential. The land which does not sit within those potential building lot areas is valued at a value per acre. And if you move to the next slide, there's another pinch point at Afton Road where it meets the old trunk number 4, and again there are potential building lots there which fall within that orange area, which could potentially have supported houses, and therefore they count as building lots, and they again have relatively high values. And the final pinch point here is where Afton Road becomes Bedeau Loop beside the highway, and you can see there the houses which have to be removed. There are 3 of them in the orange area. This also gives you an illustration of what we call the injurious affection claim. And so towards the right of that screen, there are 2 houses on Bedeau Loop, number 10 and number 30, which, as you can see, will be relatively close to where the new highway boundary is going to be. And in our opinion, they will suffer a loss in value because of where the new highway line will go. And so this plan illustrates the underlying basis for the injurious affection claim to the homes, and also illustrates where the existing houses, the ones that will have to be moved. It shows potential building lots as P1 and A4, and it's a pretty good illustration there of the various components that make up the claim. Again, on a page which is too small to read, it's an example of how we went about calculating the home for a home compensation for the 7 homes which have to be relocated. Basically, it's based on replacement cost of the house. Let me just say about the home for a home provision, there have to be certain standards met from a legal point of view to qualify for a home compensation, because it's generally quite a bit higher than a market value compensation claim. And we felt that the circumstances here warranted that higher compensation based on replacement costs of existing houses. And then this shows the detail behind the calculation of one-way line B, and also shows what the percentage loss in the lot sizes will be for those particular homes. So that's the underlying calculation behind the injurious affection claims for those homes. And getting towards the end of the report, there is a color-coded valuation summary which goes on for 3 or 4 pages. And if you were to take the time to read through this, you'll see that this is all cross-referenced by color to various parts of the report which explain the various heads of claim. So in green, for example, we have lot values and land values. Oh no, green is land value. Blue is land value. Yellow lines would be the home for a home calculations. Then the injurious affection, and the bottom there, disturbance claims. And that's broken down on these various pages so that we can see where the various components of the compensation come from, so that we can break the total down into all of the various ingredients that the provincial and federal government require. And this is a final page just explaining how the disturbance calculation was done. And there you have it, three years work in, 15 minutes. There's a lot of detail missing from my presentation there. If any of you do have questions, I will gladly answer them. I'll do my very best to answer them for you. The 8-page summary that you have probably won't tell you very much more than what I've just shown you on the slides there. The 157 pages certainly will. And that is it. I thank you very much for staying awake and for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. As you can see, there's a bit of expertise and detail in his process of coming up with compensation. Right now, we're sort of at the Q&A portion, so if I can ask Doug and Dwayne to come up. Also, Rose, if you could come up as well, and certainly council members as well. And we'll be happy to entertain any questions you have, any comments. Don't be shy. Okay. Any questions or comments, by all means? I mean, I know it's a lot to take in, but certainly this is the opportunity to, all right, way to go, Darlene. Way to lead it off.
Hi. I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me? Okay, so say the community votes yes, and I'm just wondering, when do you think we're going to start having economic ventures up there on the Trans-Canada?
That's a very good question. Although the surrender vote is a key pivotal vote for us to commence development, there are a number of things that have to take place in order for the planning process to begin. One critical area is some of those lands that are owned by the ban in what they call fee simple, private lands, have to undergo what is called an addition to reserve, so an ATR process. And so that is worked on in conjunction with Aboriginal affairs in that regard. We had retained a lawyer to work on a trust agreement for us, so the lands are now in trust out of my name and others, or it's in my name, but in trust for the band. So the ATR would be a critical piece, but that doesn't necessarily mean that things are going to stall. Rose, as she mentioned earlier, is in the process on working on a development plan, a marketing plan, things of that nature. There's going to be other votes that we're going to have. One of them is going to be a designation vote, where we would vote for the lands to be designated for commercial purposes. So that's another vote that we're going to be coming before community with. So that's sort of what is being lined up in that regard.
My questions are for Dwayne, I guess, in regards to some of the things that he said. I'm glad that you've addressed some of the issues in regards to the active transport of our people from Beedow to the main part of the reserve. But I'm still a bit concerned about the walking on the side of the road issue by making the shoulder a little bit bigger for them to walk on. I would prefer a separate path for them to come down away from the highway so that they're not putting their lives in danger at any time. The traffic in Beedow is quite heavy, and that's only for the local traffic. Wait till we start getting traffic that's coming from the other communities, surrounding communities. It'll probably triple in force. So the concern is getting our people safely from one side to the other. And you have addressed some of that with the interchange, the roundabout issue going from one side to the other. But we need to address the issue of people coming from our Beedow property to the main property where our main business is being taken care of, and also working into the development portion of the community. The other question I have in regards to is in regards to infrastructure, and I didn't see anything in the report in regards to who's covering the infrastructure for the development, water and sewer, those type of things that have been neglected to be mentioned. That's another area. The other question I have, I guess I might as well put them all together all at once, and that's in regards to the ATR process. The federal government is granting the province right now early access to the property. Now the ATR process should be going hand in hand with the development. When we first started dealing with this project, the people from INAC said that the ATR process would coincide with the highway development, so that they would be parallel. As soon as we got the highway development started, the ATR process should have been completed. They'll say it takes 2 years to do, or 2 to 4 years to do an ATR process, but they've already done an ATR process on the Simon property for us, and that was done within 14 months. So those are the questions I have that are in regards to the highway project. Dwayne, you also mentioned about employment. You said there's stronger language. Maybe you could explain to us what you mean by stronger language in regards to the employment portion of it, because that concerns me too. It should be very strong that the contractors meet the 20%. If it's the 20% that the band has agreed to, then that should be very, very, very strong language that we provide 20% of the labor force on that project. Nothing less than 20% is what it should read, not up to 20%. So those are the concerns I have in regards to the thing. With Lee, I have one question for him. I guess we'll get them all in here while I got a chance, so because you guys all dumped it on us, so I'll dump it back. In regards to the percentage of land, you based it on residential development, some of those areas. Why wouldn't you base some of it on commercial development? Is one of the questions. And what is the compensation? I know you talk about specific claims, but specific claims is separate from the highway project. Specific claims is in regards to the McChesney property and that. But we've lost access to 65% of our land for 52 years now. How do you calculate some type of calculation or benefit to the band from that? 52% loss of the highway because the highway came through in 65. There's been correspondence going back and forth for commercial development of the south side of the property for that long. Since 1967, letters been going back and forth. Where's the value in that? Where's the compensation in regards to that loss of use of land and some kind of a deal? Because what I see in this deal is it's good for Paqtnkek that we're getting commercial development and able to improve our economic circumstances. But the better deal is to the province and to the feds in escaping paying for the 52 years of loss of use. So that's a big concern to me. There should be some compensation package in regards to that loss of land. So those are the questions I have. If they can.
Thank you. Thank you for that. From what I got from what was mentioned, there were issues with respect to safety.
I can touch on the. So when I discussed about the those who do walk along the edge of Highway 104, that although it's not a perfect situation with having to walk along the interchange ramp, it's much safer than what is there today. The other opportunity in behind the guardrail location that we have, albeit not as wide as what we'd all want, it does provide another location that is more separated from any of the traffic that's not only on the highway but also taking the off ramp. I see these as an interim measure to a bigger, longer term plan, and something we see with a lot of developments that happen during my career, where your land development, and it depends on what the land development is, what the demand is going to be by the community for using those lands. So if on the north side of the highway it's say it's recreational ball fields and a soccer field, or it could be a major commercial development, or it could be completely residential, those needs and purposes are going to be quite different, and the walkability of that's going to be quite different as well. I see opportunities for enhancing that walkability between Sagamore and Beto at the time of development, to push people along a pathway through woods. I don't know if that's the safest option compared to being well offset from the travel lane on a highway, because then at least you've got some sort of there's some sort of public awareness that people are there. You're not hidden away walking through the woods, and the safety issues that may come along with that. So I would think the highway corridor again is not the perfect situation, but it's good temporarily until that land development and an ATR process and that community or residential development happens, and then the community can choose what's the best way to serve those connections.
Thank you, Dwayne. There were, I think, 3 other aspects to that question. Another one dealt with infrastructure, I believe, that you mentioned, Gerard, and there were certainly discussions with respect to infrastructure involving the overpass itself, the inclusion of sleeves within the overpass itself to allow for the potential connection between development from the south side over to the north side. So those were in discussions with the province on that. Regarding the ATR, essentially an ATR can take up to 2 years. Sometimes it can be quicker. We worked with the department to begin that process. Where we're at right now, and this is what we found out through the lawyer, that is working on this is we have to have a PIN number identified before the ATR can begin. Now, obviously we look to begin the process prior to that, but the lawyers' discussions with the municipal planner was at a comfort level was they needed to have the vote and a successful vote to take place before that process would begin. So, you know, that's where we're at right now on that. Again, it can take 2 years, it can take less than 2 years. Obviously, in the Madawaska case, it did take less than 2 years. With respect to the point about stronger language, we did look at the existing language that exists in other agreements, and basically we came out with language we thought was more preferable. It says a minimum of 20%, so at least 20%, and the requirement upon the contractor to provide written evidence that they have demonstrated their efforts to hire workforce from within the community. With respect to the item of specific claims, that is a separate matter from this compensation package itself. There is a specific claim involving the highway and access to the highway that has been validated as a specific claim that was subject to negotiations where a certain offer was made to the band. Those negotiations with the federal government are ongoing and looking to find an appropriate compensation amount for the specific claim that involved that initial severing of our reserve lands from the Trans-Canada Highway, thus not allowing us to access the south side of the reserve. So I just want to make it clear that this compensation package does not involve our specific claim that is currently under negotiations. The compensation package is specific to what Lee talked about earlier with respect to the compensation report. So that's basically what I wanted to provide in that regard.
Just in regard to the ATR process, PJ, it shouldn't be dependent on whether we vote on the highway. The ATR process should have begun a long time ago. We spoke about it at the beginning. And we spoke with INAC on the issue. I don't know who you're. Can you have someone come up from INAC there? Try to turn around and speak.
Yeah. So just
Sorry, the ATR process you're saying is dependent on whether we vote yes or no. It shouldn't be that way. The ATR process should have been an ongoing thing for the last 4 years.
Yeah.
For the last 8 or 10 years. We spoke with INAC on that. And we spoke with INAC 10 years ago in regards to the beginning of the project. They said that it would correspond with the highway development. It would be hand in hand. So why are we still waiting on the ATR process if you're providing access to the province to cut trees and stuff there? Why?
Yeah, see, I hate to say, I'm new to the file too. I think I heard there was an APR before. That was, the conversation did occur. I can't really answer the question to why it wasn't started before. I honestly don't know. But I do know right now we have started it. It has started. The issue is with the PIN, which is what the chief made mention to. Enable for us to start the ATR, we need to know the specific lands. To know the specific lands, Service Nova Scotia have to give us a PID number. They will not issue the PID number until after the vote. So we are stuck. Like we can't do anything before that.
Well, the council should be on the Service Nova Scotia for that PID number if that's what's going to be holding up the project and access to turning our lands over to the reserve. I mean, it's...
Yeah, but I mean the vote is in 3 weeks, and there's other things on
We
the
can't hear you,
edition
sorry.
that have been started. So
Yeah, the vote is in 3 weeks, and we just get the paperwork now. I mean, a lot of stuff that has to be gone through. He's got a 170-page report there he talked about that's got to be looked at by some people so that they get a clear understanding of what's taking place here. So it seems like we're working in reverse.
Okay.
We need a meeting with the chief and council to discuss exactly what this compensation package is and how this highway deal is going to go through. Because right now it's good that we're getting it. I'm not arguing that point. The point I'm arguing is what's in the agreement.
Oh, yeah.
The proof is in the details. The devil's in the details, as they say. So, because I know we've done a lot.
Did you?
All right, so I want to address this ATR, which people are probably wondering what this ATR means, additions to reserve. So all the lands that are held in fee simple, right here, in the purple land, which is common band land. So all these parcels of land before these ones that are marked 20418, 20415, those are all the parcels that are impacted by the highway. These lands also, some of them are held in fee simple. The ones in the purple are fee simple, which is private land that the band owns, but it's not registered band land yet. So what happened was when the highway process and negotiations started, the lands department at that time, Indian Affairs, didn't want to go through all of this ATR process at once, where we would have had to have carved out all the land afterwards. So what happened was we made sure the Hatchmont designs that Dwayne Cross provided, we made sure the road alignments and stuff were how much of it was impacting our fee simple land and our band land. Once we were able to get all of these parcels of land and made sure that these ones, the rest of the land, then became into an application under the, our survey program to make that band land. So we had Thompson Group come in and do all the survey for each of these land. So there were 7 parcels that we had to get surveyed. We had an issue with the surveyor, or at least a wording on the plans, and we were able to get them all finalized after PJ went and visited with the minister in Ottawa. Now what's going on is that because of that surveyor taking so long, the project where it was working adjacent with the ATR process, and I do know what you're talking about because I was sitting at the table with the past Chief Gerard on this, was that we wanted to make sure the ATR process and the highway project lined up. However, now that we're caught up, it's not delayed because of the highway. It's not delayed because of this highway. It's delayed because we have to get the PID numbers to register into the registry so we can get all this land into that process. Now, mind you, there's only 5 parcels here that is impacted by the highway. We added 2 more parcels where we did buy private property up and around, which are another part of the ATR. So you'll see better up here, you'll see the land that's in there. So right now, we're talking and getting the PID numbers, and they are going to be into the Indian registry system. And we do have a new lands officer that we work with. We had 4 turnovers in lands so far. So we do have somebody else that's working with us on land project. We do have a proposal that we had all this land surveyed. And we also had a proposal to make sure our subdivisions and all that stuff was surveyed into Indian creation of the Indian Reserve, they call it. So I don't know if that helps a little bit, but yes, it did get sidetracked. And no, it's not going to be delayed because of the highway. ATR will happen regardless, but just because of the way their surveys were worded, it delayed us a bit. Oh, and I forgot, we had a water course issue. Who owned the river was what the questions were being asked. So we had to go through the water course issue, which Member 2 also went through with their highway development plan with the water course. Now that the wording and all that's acceptable, we are all, we are proceeding with the ATR. But we're doing 7 parcels versus 5 on a plan. We have 2 additional parcels. So all the proposal work and all the planning work for the land is there. We want to do another land use plan and make sure these parcels here got proper PID numbers and make sure that they are into the Indian registry system. Does that help a little? Does that answer your question on the ATR? Yeah? Okay. Thanks. Thanks for your question.
Thank you, Rose. That's a really good overview there, and I appreciate it. I mean, and what I'm getting from that is what really sort of drives the ATR is the certainty in the land parcel itself. And when you have surveys that are not finalized, legal descriptions, so you really don't know the precise boundaries of the particular parcel to be converted to ATR. That's why it's been taking so long, I guess it's the upshot of it. Thanks for the history on that.
Just so everybody knows now that Indian Affairs just recently got a new ATR policy. So where we were under, like we thought we were going to have all those land parcels into ATR with the old policy. We're not. We're into the new policy now. So the new policy is supposed to help, strengthen and fasten the process of ATR. However, the only thing that, right now that's anchor for us is that, the land be turned over quickly because we want to make that into banned land because that's going to determine our land use plan, how we want to use the land for our community. So we're really pushing for ATR to be faster than 2 years or even, the fastest I think it'll turn over is 2 years. For like, some of that land will be held in fee simple till then.
Thank you. Question?
Actually, it's not really a question. It's just a comment I'd like to make. I would like to commence the gratefulness of everybody here today, and also Rose Julian and Chief and Council, and all the expertise that are here to make this a wonderful future for the whole community. And I think with majority of people as a general, we think positive, we think negative. But I myself personally would love to thank our Chief and Council because these are the people that are working for us. And the people that are here today from different areas to make this happen, I would definitely love to thank these people because they're the ones that are building our future with us. And I hope if anybody has any type of question of the negative side of it, all it takes is 1 second to ask a question, and then hopefully everybody will go on the same path to build this future for our children. Because I think it's a beautiful build for our community.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, what I want to mention, and thank you for that, is it's taken a long time. I mean, Rose brought together, a tremendous team who has worked hard, worked diligently on, this particular project. I also want to recognize the efforts of then Chief Gerard Julian over the years, because this took a long time. It took a long time. It took a lot of hard work. It took a lot of leadership to bring this along, and I really appreciate that, and I want to acknowledge that as well. Thank you.
There's questions I think that are still unanswered, though. I wanted to bring up the infrastructure piece. Now, I know Jason, I look at Jason because Jason's got the Hatchmont designs finally at that stage where we can review them. And the design work that's been done for the interchange, the dynamics of what we have done for that is that we are already in the process of discussing those sleeves and already doing a service and plan of how much water and wastewater will be required, because we already know that our wastewater and water is not going to hold anything on the other side, especially business. But we did do that impact study on that, but we've already said that we have to identify an area where we have to keep going over to the south side, because that's where we want to build our future at there. So we've already gone through with Chris Sarson, I think that's his name, and Brent Boyle and all them, and they're doing actual the engineer technical work for the south side and actually put some dollars and cents to that to see if we can put some of that through while this is being built. The safety issue, we've addressed this so many times. I know the other chiefs from other communities have already said, make sure you have your safety transport plan ready. So one thing that got identified, we have a project. We're working with CDI, which is the Confederation of Economic Development Initiative of CANDO. And what we end up doing is we called out the municipality, where we now have this joint project, I guess, we're working nationally on. And a lot of things that we brought up that the municipality is not fulfilling for our community was lighting in street walks or sidewalks, what do you call. So we've talked with Dwayne, and I think that's where Dwayne was kind of getting at, is extending that so much from the road and having that part on, because we'd like to at least go through a proper sidewalk for that. We did an assessment on his sidewalk, and we can do one side, but we can't do both. So it'll be kind of fenced off kind of thing. Like, we kind of are looking at the plan at St. Martha's, that bridge going into St. Martha's. We're looking at that kind of plan. So having that all done with our concept plan and with Dwayne and Jason with those Hatchmont designs really will help, making sure that we have that proper sidewalk system. Because I know, like Chief Bob from Millbrook said, make sure you put something there, because people are running across the highway, they're cutting through bridges, they're cutting through the fence trying to get through, and for sure we're not going to want anything like that happen here to our community. So we do have all of that stuff. We're trying to work hand in hand, one thing at a time, but everything is kind of coming really quickly, but those plans are definitely alive, and they're going to be implemented.
Any other questions or comments? I know this is getting along in the day, but okay. Going once? Okay, then. I think we're ready to wind down then, if that's the case. I really want to sort of transition then into maybe whoever wants to offering some sort of closing comments. Thank you all for coming out, really, and taking in this community meeting, which is a very important time for us as a community. There is a lot that comes with development, and there's a lot to be done, not only getting ready for this vote coming up, but afterwards. It is a tremendous opportunity, and I want to once again thank a number of people around here, people involved with Aboriginal affairs. I see Krista there, I see Naomi, Judy, Jason, Lee, Dwayne, and the list goes on. There's a number of people that, Rose got together throughout the years to really make this happen. And, there's so many people to thank, not only existing leadership, but certainly past leadership as well. So, I mean, we're looking at a very special future, I believe, and we're going to do what we need to do to make that right. And just to put it out there for any other council to provide any closing comments.
I just want to thank everybody that came here today. And, it's been a very long process and a very hard process. A lot of people put a lot of work into this, previous councils right up to today. But I really want to mention the staff, because there are other components of this whole project, and one of them was being financially accountable. And I know they went through a very rough time, becoming financially accountable, becoming diligent with their reports. It was a very hard time, and there was a lot of stress in the band, but I'm really happy that they overcame that. And we had to become financially responsible in order to embark on such a project. And we finally reached that point where we are financially accountable, that maybe businesses may trust in investing in us. And that's a very important component of our community. And I really got to hand it to the staff. Everybody, that pulled their weight. I know they lost sleep, they were stressed out, but they were diligent. And today, I think we're ready for this development. And I see good things in the future. And I just want to thank everybody for being here. Lalio.
I want to thank everyone as well for coming to the meeting. Just really, really hoping that each and every one of us look towards this development as an opportunity, a really positive opportunity for each and every one of us, our children and our children to come. It only comes once. Sometimes, you know, this is just a grand opportunity, so I'm really hoping that we take hold of this and move forward. Thank you.
I'd just like everybody to kind of take a peek at the PowerPoint. It was rolling while I was talking, but right there, that demonstrates how our community kind of came, not kind of, but really did come together. You know, there has been a lot of planning from, you know, strategic planning when it started to developing a communications plan, you know, getting the chief and council ready to go out and make negotiations at the province. You know, win a victory of $1.3 million to train our people, not only to work on this project, but also to sustain it, and also to get them ready for entrepreneurship. You know, we see council members there that are still, you know, still band members, that are still very supportive. You know, a lot of questions, and questions are good because we want to make sure we give the right answers. And if we don't know the answers, we'll find out for you. You know, there's a lot of training that took place. There's a lot of, you know, really innovative things that we've been doing for our community. You know, now that we're talking about the ATR, making sure we develop that land to our code, you know, we can start looking at how we're going to utilize the land. So there's a lot of things. I mean, like you can see up there, like, you know, right from the get-go, there was a lot of planning done by a lot of people of this community. It wasn't something done overnight. It took us a long time to get here. And I want to say thank you to the community, to all of you guys, because definitely without the strategy of the people, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about this tonight. And my past chief and council members and all the staff that help out all the time and take part in the sessions and, you know, part of strategic planning, and they're getting ready, education's ready, social's busy, capital's been busy with the houses and all that. And, you know, our education department, our employment and training is always trying to make sure we have all those funds where we can train people to be part of this project. But it's not just a project. After a while, it's going to be our future. And I really do hope that, you know, the community sees well, and if there's anything we need to do and talk, this is now to do it. And and there's another session that we're going to be taking part on July 10th. And we're going to try to have another little open house towards the end of the month. But I know it's busy with graduation time right now. But I want to thank all the youth that also came out and be part of the panel. The youth wanted to speak tonight, and they definitely did. They let us hear what they had to say. So keep it up. Keep up the good work, and keep up the good work for our current chief and council and our staff and the people especially. So July 13th is going to be decision-making day. It's up to the people now.
So we'll have John honor us with a closing prayer.
Okay. Hello. Okay. Miss
Take care, everyone. So what are you up to? You gonna stay or? Yeah. Cool. Let's